Houston, you have a problem, and it's that your team stinks and the Packers are better. Boys, let's hit it. And we are live here in the Game On Wisconsin studios. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Victory Sunday evening. Welcome to the Game On Wisconsin Roundtable. I'm your host this evening. I am Jacob Westendorf. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at Jacob Westendorf. I am joined by my partner who missed yesterday's show because he's not committed to the brand, and that is Jason Perrone. You can follow him on Twitter. He is at Jason Perrone. And I want to give a special shout out to somebody who was supposed to be our guest, but he's currently fighting an illness. And we are practicing social distancing, and that is Matt Ramage. Matt, you can follow him on Twitter. I'm sure you already do, but just in case you don't, you can follow him over there at Matt Ramage. And we have, of course, Zach Jacobson, and you can follow him on Twitter at It's Zachariah J. And Zach, did I spell that right? I did that kind of on a whim. So
yeah, you spelled smells right, I think.
Yeah, you spelled including smells. You spelled all of that right. Thanks, I appreciate it.
I do know that he's bathed at least within the last 3 weeks because he did right before we did the Illusion of Complexity a couple weeks ago before our inaugural episode. So I appreciate that. I'm convinced you only did that because of Aaron, but that's okay. I would do the same thing. I want to start with something cool and a little bit of a milestone. I like round numbers and something that we hit. Two things. Number one, earlier this week for the J Swag Daddy Swag Bag giveaway, we hit $4,000 on our donations. So that was cool. We sit just over $4,000 as I speak right now. The goal was 5,000 and the goal is to blow that out of the water. The other thing we have was we hit 3,000 Twitter followers on our Twitter page over at Game On WI. So thank you all that have taken your time to like, subscribe, do all that stuff. The goal is to continue to do this as long as you will let us. So something that I've said this before. I think I was taught by Bill Huber when I interned at the original, well, not the original, but Packer Report before Ross Uglum took over there and is doing some great work for them, obviously. But he basically told me that if you don't have listeners and you don't have readers, then you're writing in a diary. And I am thankful that we are not writing in a diary. And guys, something else I am thankful for is that we are not fans of the Houston Texans. We are fans of the Green Bay Packers, who win today 35-20 in a game that honestly wasn't as close as the final score might indicate. The Packers really kind of took turns in the second half, making kind of one dumb mistake after another. This very easily could have been another 40-point output, and it could have been a 49-13 kind of a game. Corey Linsley was two very uncharacteristic plays where he snapped the ball before he was supposed to. And it seemed very obvious to me on two specific plays, one before the 2-minute warning in the first half, and one before a 3rd and 1 where Jamal Williams ended up getting stuffed in the backfield. Linsley snapped the ball. Nobody else on the offensive line moved, but everyone else did. Everyone else on the Texans defense did after that. So that was interesting. But guys, I'm going to go around a little bit first. Zach, I'll start with you. Beauty before age, I suppose. Just some of your general thoughts on this game as it progressed and ultimately became final?
Well, my first thought is that I'm just really grateful for the way the Packers medical staff kind of handled Davante Adams' injury, because you saw what the Falcons did with Julio Jones and a similar injury that he had. They kind of rushed him back out for that game against the Packers on Monday night, and he aggravated it, and he missed the ensuing week of practice, and that became a lingering issue for him. But now you see Davante Adams, he's back, he's 100%, and he's just this absolute freak of nature on the field. He's back, and he's showing this full arsenal on the field of all, everything in his repertoire. He was just absolutely working the Texans defense on Sunday, and you saw that Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams connection just back at full force. Unfortunately, outside of Adams, the Packers didn't really get much help from the rest of their receivers. I think the rest of their guys combined for 2 catches and 6 yards, which is probably going to be something that we discuss later in the show. But yeah, the offense right now, as far as Matt LaFleur's play calling, I think it was one of his best games of the season as far as play calling goes. I think against an opponent like the Texans, I think that's an important thing to consider. All variables thrown into the equation here. It was one of his best called games of the season. So, yeah, That was my biggest takeaway, just how well the offense was playing and how well they were able to kind of get that cohesion back with Adams. Really, last week it was his return, but I think they kind of eased him back in, but now he's kind of full go, fully healthy. Everything's kind of clicking.
And Jason, what were your thoughts just as the game progressed and ultimately, like I said, it came final?
Well, Jake, you said beauty before age, and I'm just still looking for this beauty. I don't know where it's at on the screen. So, hey, Zach.
Thanks,
yeah, my big thing. I mean, a lot of what Zach said, same thing there. I had to remind myself that the defense was missing Darnell Savage back there. I know he was listed with an injury, but he played. He came off the field a couple times. He had a big play. Preston showed up. I don't know if it was a matter of Houston's offense just finally clicking and getting going in the second half, because when you basically shut them out in the first half, you kind of expect that points are going to come at a premium, and then all of a sudden they figured a bunch of stuff out. And I'd have to go back and watch and see if they started to get conservative again. But when you're playing guys like, and I know that we had a healthy, lengthy discussion about this amongst our Game On Wisconsin team during the game, but when you got guys like Josh Jackson out there at corner, you have to be careful with how you're playing guys that don't play on the regular. So I can't complain with the victory. I mean, offensively, defensively, Adrian Amos finally showed up. It was nice to see him come on. Preston Smith with the big fourth down stop. Those are the kind of things I like to see. I hope Chris Barnes is okay. I love what he's contributing, but Kamal Martin comes out. I mean, all of a sudden, inside linebacker is a thing on the Green Bay Packers, and it's about darn time. So I can't really complain. Special teams obviously was frustrating with the block punt and then the onside kick. Those two things are frustrating. I don't want to see those things happen later in the season. So fortunately, it's not. But in the end, Packers win. It's Victory Sunday, and it's going to be a Victory Monday as well.
Yeah, I don't want to give up on a guy like now. I mean, granted, he's played, a few games, but man, it seems like anytime Dexter Williams is on the field, nothing good happens. And it was very obviously his assignment that he blew on the blocked punt, and he was immediately replaced. And it's something that you don't get a ton of opportunities. He was elevated from the practice squad. The only reason that happened is because Aaron Jones did not participate in today's game with a calf injury. And now you kind of wonder if they go into next week, say Jones has to miss Sunday's game, say they hold him out again, hoping he's ready for that Thursday night showdown against the 49ers. Do they maybe look a different direction on the practice squad? I wouldn't be surprised, because this is somebody who was very deep in Matt LaFleur's doghouse. I've said this about 100 different ways. I think if you had injected Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst with truth serum last year, you would have gotten them to say that Matt LaFleur wanted to keep Trey Carson at the end of camp last year, and Gutekunst said, nope, we're keeping Dexter Williams because he's more talented. We don't think he'll get through the practice squad, whatever the case may be. That's a tough one. The other kind of tough go today in the backfield came at the person of A.J. Dillon. Now, I'm not judging somebody again based on, I think he ended up with 5 carries for 11 yards. 5 carries isn't going to do anything. But I do think you saw today, every week when the backfield was healthy, we're getting, where's A.J. Dillon? Why is he not getting any carries? We're not doing anything like that. I think today you saw why. Jamal Williams in terms of all around running game and passing game. And listen when I say this, because you guys are going to go nuts, but running game, passing game, pass blocking, all that stuff. Jamal Williams is the best all around running back on this Packers team in terms of the most polished skills at each of those positions. Aaron Jones is obviously a star with the ball in his hands. He's a special player as a runner. He's a good enough pass blocker. He's good in the passing game. A.J. Dillon just isn't very polished at a lot of those things. And there's a reason that he is relatively firmly behind those two guys in the backfield. And I'm okay with that. I don't need to see A.J. Dillon get on the field necessarily. I'm not saying I don't want him on the field, but I don't want him on the field at the expense of Jamal Williams or Aaron Jones, especially if Aaron Jones is healthy. Those guys are just better players. And Dillon, you can tell some stuff. There are some things where he's running a little tentatively and maybe not running behind his pads the way that he should. And in the passing game, kind of nondescript. He didn't do a whole lot of that in college. Now the Packers insist that he can, and I have no reason not to believe them, but not the debut that people were hoping for. Obviously, people hoping for the A.J. Dillon breakout game. That didn't happen. And that's something to me that I think if it does happen, that's going to be a 2021 type of thing. The Packers, they just have two capable backs. And you heard Matt LaFleur after the game say that he feels they have two starters at the running back position. And with Jones and Jamal Williams both, well, Jones wasn't healthy this week, obviously, but the hope is that he can come back either next week or in the very near future. Jason, what are your thoughts on the backfield situation and Dylan's performance today?
Well, he didn't do much today, and I think that just kind of proved for the why isn't A.J. Dillon getting every carry near the goal line crowd to them why that's the case. So I am glad, especially with Jamal Williams and his contract being up and knowing that they've got a tough situation, all the things we've already talked about as far as will he be back next year, will he not be, that they are talking to Aaron Jones, because A.J. Dillon is still a ways away. I mean, he may be good, and he's got a chance to be good, but he's not quite there yet. So it's when Dexter Williams is getting called up, you know that you're starting to get to the bottom of that depth chart there. And yeah, I mean, Dexter, it's unfortunate, but those are the kind of things that are reasons why he's on the practice squad still, and he hasn't been able to crack the roster, for all the good things that he does. There's a reason why he's down there. And if that is what Matt LaFleur said at the end of training camp last year, he was right, because Trey Carson looked pretty good. Now, maybe he would not have been good and maybe in game action, but everything that we're seeing right now, and I was kind of one of those too. I was like, man, you got a battering ram like A.J. Dillon. Why don't you try handing him the ball? Well, I see now why, and I'm not going to argue anymore with it, but I will just say Jamal Williams. I mean, the dude balled out. I mean, he numbers wise, obviously, Devontae Adams nearly 200 yards, 2 TDs, just lighting the world on fire. 12 looking like his usual self, throws 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, has a great day. Jamal Williams overall, in terms of value and everything that the Packers needed, because they needed to drain the clock, run the ball. That was the strategy coming in, and Jamal Williams made it absolutely possible. And he threw in another nearly 40 yards catching too. So Jake, your point about him being the most polished, I think people need to realize that's probably true, even though, like you said, Aaron Jones is the dynamic guy and the fan, the favorite with the ball in his hand, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not pushing Aaron Jones out the door. I want him back. I hope he's back, especially for San Francisco. I think, if this team could beat the Texans that lined up today, I don't take anything for granted. But, I mean, the Vikings are bad, and they're waving the white flag. For those that didn't see, I believe it was Greg Williams, our friend and contributor, pointed out in our Slack channel that Harrison Smith is supposedly on the trade block and has unfollowed the Vikings on Instagram. They'll never trade him to the Packers, but damn it if that wouldn't be fun.
Yeah.
And all I ask is trade him to some slapdick AFC team that isn't going to contend or something, because the last thing I want to see is like him end up with Seattle and paired with Jamal Adams, or just don't go to one of those teams. Don't be to go to a team that could be in Green Bay's way, so to speak. Tampa Bay, I know that I've said what I've said about Antonio Brown, but Tampa Bay getting Antonio Brown does have scary potential the other direction as well. So, I mean, that is what it is. That's not what we're here to talk about necessarily. Zach, what were your thoughts on the backfield performance, and specifically the performance of Jamal Williams in the absence of Aaron Jones?
It really wasn't surprising, because we know what to expect from Jamal Williams. And to your point about him being all-rounded, that really could be true for the last 2 to 3 years, really ever since he came to the league. He's been the best Packers pass protecting back, and dating back to the Mike McCarthy days of everyone complaining about him not getting on the field because of the whole pass protecting thing. You saw why the Packers love him so much and why he could be, valued so heavily come free agency this spring. But yeah, Jamal Williams he rose to the occasion. And like you said, Matt LaFleur, he said it today after the game. They view him as a starter. They have 2 capable starting running backs and a promising young guy in A.J. Dillon, who today, he showed why his progression, which I think it's also important to note too. He didn't have preseason reps like rookies every other year, in the middle of a pandemic. He was robbed of those preseason reps. Yeah, training camp and everything, but he didn't have the preseason reps to really get going and really kind of put the mental aspect of the game into motion. So everything that we're seeing right now with A.J. Dillon, this is like the raw, fresh rookie hitting the field for the first time. So, and Jason, me too. I was one of those people that, you're at the goal line, you have this dude with massive tree trunks for thighs, give him the freaking ball, let him just pound it in. But, we're seeing why now too, why they're kind of just easing him back a little bit. They don't need him to be great right now. They don't need him to be anything special. And Aaron Rodgers even said it himself this past week. They're not going to force carries with A.J. Dillon when they have Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams both doing great things. And the fact that Dexter Williams was called up off of the practice squad on Saturday, getting that game day elevation, that just really shows you that maybe they're not so comfortable right now with having Jamal Williams being backed up by the second round rookie. They need a little more insurance behind him while Aaron Jones recuperates.
Yeah, and that'll be something interesting to watch as it goes. I think the thing that I can speak to the most is this isn't, and I say this all the time, this isn't Madden. Like, you can't just plug somebody in and it's just as simple as play football. Like, yes, they've all been doing this for a really long time, but it is a hard game to learn. It's a hard transition. And like you mentioned, Zach, the rookies this year, some of them are at a steeper learning curve. Now, there's a lot of them. And I know that Packers Twitter mentions every single time a rookie receiver catches a ball, but that's kind of the exception. In general, most rookies don't typically play very well. And I know Justin Jefferson's having a really good year, and I know Chase Claypool's had a good start to his career, but for the most part, rookies struggle, and rookies struggle a lot. And Dillon, I think, is no exception. I don't personally see a need, like I said, to just continue to pound the table for him to play, especially when the two guys in front of him are better players. And they're better players in the nuances of the game, and they're better players in the basic aspects of the game as well. And that's for right now. That can change. We might be talking about A.J. Dillon as the starting running back in 2021. That's certainly a possibility as well. Obviously, Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones both have expiring contracts at the end of this season. Somebody that does not have an expiring contract, and I am so thankful, is the one that is sitting with Jason tonight, and that is Davante Adams. What can be said? I mean, this guy is incredible. He had a big game that first week of the season. Last week, it was a little quiet, and you get the same garbage narrative takes that come out through the whole week of, is Rodgers forcing the ball to Davante Adams? Well, maybe there's a good reason why. Today, Davante Adams' stat line, 13 catches, 196 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and could have been more. Rodgers missed him on a couple of inbreakers early in the game too, so that could have been more. Davante Adams is a stud with really, you mentioned it, Zach, they had 2 catches for 6 yards outside of, or as far as the other receivers go. Those were both Malik Taylor. Marcos Valdes-Scantling, 4 targets, 0 catches. Darius Shepard, 1 target, 0 catches. They didn't do a whole lot at the receiving position outside of Adams today, but he was phenomenal. And he kind of threw some shade at the Texans cornerbacks, basically saying I can only eat what's in front of me, which kind of made me laugh a little bit. But the Texans, their defense is not good, but the Packers, they came into a game, no Aaron Jones, no Alan Lazard, a hobbled Robert Tonyan, and they found a way to continue to do it, and largely because of 17. I lead you guys into that with Jason. Is he, we say top 5 all the time. Is he top 1?
I don't know. I mean, his footwork is elite, and he's turned himself into something very special. And there was a lot of people that doubted him. And I don't know if any of us on this show were among them. I'm not judging, but there were a lot of people that doubted him in his second year when he was struggling in 2015. The joke of Janice over Davante and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I look around the league, and if Julio Jones is healthy, look at what DeAndre Hopkins is doing with the Cardinals. So as far as number 1, I think it depends on what you're talking about. But if you're talking about his footwork, I was watching the game today, and I was trying to explain to, my 7-year-old, which is, trying to explain anything to a 7-year-old. But if Davante Adams is standing and he's at the line of scrimmage when the ball is snapped, he is instantly open. Davante Adams is open. He needs such little separation. And there were some big gaps today that the Texans defense either didn't realize it was Davante Adams, or he just, took advantage of what they weren't doing. But he was wide open a couple times today. He's a very special player. And we're getting to that point now where not this season, we got to enjoy this season, but after this year, it's going to be one of those things where it's like, okay, now that after they figure out what they're going to do this year, then they have to kind of focus their attention to, are they or are they not going to keep him, because they're going to be signing him close to his year 30 and all those things that wide receivers typically go through that make a difference in contract negotiations. But the guy is at 16 targets, 13 catches. When he is going to have a game like this, yes, Aaron Rodgers should absolutely force the ball to Davante Adams as much as he could. I mean, look at what happened to Marquez Valdez-Scantling today. He drops that ball near the sideline. I don't know what is going on with that guy. I want so badly for him to just have a massive game, like have another game like he did against the Raiders last year, and it's just not happening. So what they're doing at receiver, and thank God Malik Taylor was able to step up, make a couple of big catches, and they need Allen Lazard back. I heard Lazard was at least doing some stuff on the field. They need Allen Lazard back for the late season push, but Davante Adams is absolutely just, that's why I chose this image, because he's running away from everybody and anybody else that's around him. If he's on the field, like I said, he's open. That's special.
He was incredible. And Zach, we talked about it and you kind of alluded to it earlier, but 2 catches and 6 yards from Malik Taylor. He scored a touchdown. So, from a fantasy perspective, I guess that was kind of nice, but I don't think anybody was starting Malik Taylor in their fantasy leagues. But that being said, Packers Twitter this year has developed into 2 factions, right? There's the group that says they should have drafted a receiver. I can't believe they didn't draft a receiver. Why didn't they get Rodgers more help? And then there's the group that makes fun of that group every single time. And personally, I don't know which group is more insufferable between the two, because I think the answer is somewhere in the middle, right? The Packers probably should have gotten another wide receiver. It didn't work out to the point that they did, but dunking on all those people and saying like, oh, see, it's fine. They're fine with Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Equinemius St. Brown and Malik Taylor and Darius Shepard is like, probably not. They're probably not okay with that if they have to play a really good defense in the playoffs. If they have to play Tampa Bay again and they don't have Allen Lazard and a hobbled Aaron Jones, and they're probably in a little bit of trouble. That being said, the Packers are going into the trading deadline type of scenario. Do you think that they should be making calls, trying to add another pass catcher to this group, and do they need to?
No, 100%. I think they do need to add somebody. Look, I was in the camp who was very surprised when they didn't draft a receiver. And right now, just knowing how Matt LaFleur is, knowing the kind of philosophy he goes, I mean, really outside of the top 3 receivers that they have, the snaps fall off. I mean, maybe like the 4th guy on the depth chart is probably going to be seeing maybe like anywhere between 5 to 8, 10 snaps per game. That being said, when you're forcing 16, I shouldn't say forcing, when you're throwing 16 targets to Davante Adams, yeah, that'll probably work against the Texans. But to your point, that probably won't work against the Buccaneers. That probably won't work even against the 49ers, even with, as badly as they're injured. That won't work against really good teams in the playoffs. And I don't know if you can rely on even Allen Lazard, as good as he's been, as your number 2 wide receiver. Even Marquez Valdez-Scantling is your number 3. I mean, that catch he dropped on the sideline today. I mean, he's had stints throughout the season where he's been good and then he just falls off and just fades into oblivion. We don't know what happened to him. It's like a complete just loss of confidence. I don't know what the deal is with him, but I think that's really what he is at this point. But regardless, the point is what they're doing right now, it's probably sustainable for the rest of the season, being able to just kind of rotate who they have and just, scheming guys into successful positions. But at the same time, there's no reason why you can't go into outside resources and add to your roster and make things even more easier and make your team even more lethal and just make your offense just more potent. Make yourself one of the best teams in the NFC, more so than where you are right now. Like, contend. Look what the Buccaneers are doing. Like, I think Antonio Brown is garbage. I think he's a garbage human. I think, some of the things he's done, he's just totally insufferable. He's horrible. But the Buccaneers, they're getting Tom Brady help. And they're getting somebody who was arguably the best wide receiver in football 4 or 5 years ago. And he already has Mike Evans. He already has Chris Godwin. He already has a rotation of running backs in the backfield. And Rob Gronkowski is waking up from hibernation like a big ass bear. And the Seahawks were even throwing their hat into the whole sweepstakes thing. So, they're trying to get better. And I know the Packers typically move in silence with these types of things, but I have the feeling in my stomach that just tells me they're not going to do anything. They're not going to make a move for a receiver. We're going to hear about how they were invested. Kind of like the whole Robbie Anderson, Emmanuel Sanders thing. They're invested. Their names were involved. And yeah, sure, they're probably going to do it, but they're not going to. That's pretty much how I feel. I think they're going to roll with the group they have for the rest of the year. And I don't think they should.
That'll be interesting. I think that it's hard to say, right? Because we don't know who's available, what the prices are, all that stuff. I mean, I had this discussion with your partner from Open Book, and we were talking about, he says he wanted the Packers to at least try. And I was like, okay, does that count if like they trade for Mohamed Sanu for a 2nd-round pick? Does that count as trying? Like, I mean, because if that's the case, that's a bad trade for them to make. Obviously, I was being a little facetious when I said that, but you don't want them to do that either. But at the same time, I agree with you. If there's an ability to acquire somebody like somebody from the Texans, Will Fuller or Randall Cobb or somebody like that, and it works from a salary standpoint and everything like that, then yeah, I think they should be looking to make their team better in some facet. And maybe that means somebody on the defensive side of the ball as well. I know the JJ Watt thing is starting to gain some steam just because he sounded like a defeated human after the game. Whether or not that works, I don't know. Like I said, there are ways they could probably make that work if they wanted to. I think that would be freaking filthy if they could. I don't know. I think that I'm with you. If there's a way to make themselves better, that they should do that. Whether or not they have that capability, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to. I think it's very simple to say they should go out and get somebody. But I think also a lot of what happened was somebody saw that the Bucs names were in the news because they signed Antonio Brown, and that got a lot of people up into arms because why aren't the Packers doing something like that? Well, trust me, guys. Listen, look at me when I say this, everybody. Right here. I'm right here. The camera's in on me here. It'll zoom in. You did not want Antonio Brown. Trust me. And I marked it. I bookmarked the tweet, everything like that. When he screws this up, I will be the first person in line to tell you guys I told you so. It's fine. Trust me. It's okay if people aren't talking about it.
And that's something that I tweeted too. And then I tried telling people, like, it's okay to admit that, he makes your football team better from like a roster standpoint. Cause yeah, he's freaking great. He's a great wide receiver, but he would also probably destroy your locker room and just burn everything to the ground. It's okay to admit both things. Both things can be true.
Well, let's talk about it this way. I said this to one of the guys that I kind of go back and forth with on Twitter a couple times too. In a year where you need everybody to basically, Jamal Williams talks about this. They are told essentially, I'm paraphrasing some of the stuff he said a little bit, but come to work, go to meetings, take your ass home. You trust Antonio Brown to do that?
Nope.
I don't.
Nope.
When you're one swab away from infecting the entire team, I mean, I don't put it past Antonio Brown to find out he has COVID and go up and lick Aaron Rodgers' face. Like, I don't. He's a strange person. And then you add in the legal stuff and everything like that. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because, yeah, you're right. From a talent standpoint, he makes the Packers better. He's a piece of crap, and you can't trust him as far as you can throw him. So we've talked way too much about Antonio Brown. I'd like to move on from that if we can. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball because, Llama, is that you? Damn you.
That's the only llama there is, so that's got to be
the llama. Yeah, he put that up there after you zoomed in.
Yeah, that's fair. I understand it. He says, who have the Packers really beat? He'll give us half a point for the Saints. Well, I guess we get half a point. And as Devontae Adams said, it can only eat what's in front of us. I can promise you that they'll beat Chicago twice. So there's that.
5 out of 6.
5 out of 6. I like that one. That's a good one. The defense, guys, 13 pressures today from the pass rush. I want to talk about Preston Smith because it was a 4th and 1 where the Texans are trying to kind of make their way back into the game. It's 28-10 at the time. And actually, it was 28-13 at the time, excuse me. And Houston has a chance to go for it, maybe get down the field, make it a 1-possession game. Preston Smith snuffs out this option and absolutely destroys them and swallows Deshaun Jackson on that option, just knocks him over. And he was active today. And Rashawn Gary was active today. He had a sack nullified and he had a pressure. And the Packers as a whole had 13 pressures, like I mentioned. Zadarius Smith was it? Oh, this llama dude, this is a different llama. I'm being told now he's a Vikings fan. So, okay, we've beaten Minnesota once, and I can promise you it'll be twice after next Sunday.
Yeah, come back next week. A week from today.
I tell you what, Vikings fans are the worst. They're Bears fans. You know what? Maybe it's a good thing Matt Ramage isn't here because we would have gone off just on this. But
well, Jake, that's coming from a guy who lives in the state of Illinois. Those are some very harsh words towards Vikings fans.
Listen, Bears fans are delusional from the standpoint of every time their team wins a 13-12 game where they had a stupid fumble that was kicked 7 times and they fell on it in the end zone as their only offensive touchdown of the day. They're delusional enough to think that's sustainable. Vikings fans are the ones that are like, they know their team sucks, won't admit it, and just tells you how bad your team is throughout the entire process of everything. So, whatever. Yeah. The Vikings, we came into your place and we beat you up and down the field, and now you come to our house on Sunday. We're going to smack you all over Lambeau Field on Sunday. So I look forward to it. Anyways, Preston Smith and the pass rush. 13 pressures today. It was wonderful. I enjoyed every second of it, and it was nice to see this pass rush kind of get going. And I look forward to it, guys. I think it's going to be something that you always thought at some point that Preston Smith was going to play better. Zadarius Smith was going to play a little bit better. Rashawn Gary was going to play better. Kenny Clark was going to play better. This team has the horses to rush the passer. They just haven't done it, or they haven't had them all together. Jason, are you encouraged by today's performance, or are you chalking it up to Houston's got a crappy offensive line?
No, I think when you make good plays, I think there's something to be said there. The pressure was nice to see. If Preston Smith's going to join the party now, awesome. I don't know if he was dealing with an injury. I don't want to make excuses for him. He didn't play well enough through the first month of the season, but he makes a big play today, and maybe that catapults him and makes something out of more. Rashawn Gary has stepped up. They've got more versatility up front. I thought Dean Lowry's energy was good today. You know, Will Redmond, I don't love that he doesn't wrap and tackle, but he's got the mentality back there as a safety, and he seems smart. He just likes to launch himself like a missile, and you got to be careful doing those types of things too. But the depth is good. Like I said, inside linebacker is starting to become a position of advantage where it wasn't before. There isn't much not to like about the defense, except for whenever they're up 3 possessions or more, it's just, and I, again, go back to what I said earlier. I understand you have to play to the strengths of who's out there, and who was not out there today was Kevin King and Darnell Savage. But playing off, letting everything in front of you go. And I'm not taking anything away from Houston. They've got a good bunch of receivers. Will Fuller was good. Randall Cobb led the Texans in receptions today. Randall Cobb looked good today. So they've got good guy. Brandon Cooks too. I don't want to leave him out. He played really well today as well. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, I think this defense has got something to really keep building on and peak at the right time at the end of this season. They've got the players to do it, barring, hopefully, I'm knock on wood here, that everyone's healthy. If Chris Barnes is healthy and they've got all of their options available to them, yeah, I don't think it's a facade. I think this defense has the ability to be really, really good. And we talked a little tiny bit before the show started about Jair and how Jair is kind of starting to carry that Richard Sherman effect from 4 or 5 years ago, where teams just didn't throw to his side of the field. It's like, as an offensive coordinator, you're coming in and you're basically taking half the field away from yourself right away. The Packers aren't going to ever argue with that.
Zach, what are your thoughts on the team's defense? We'll go overall defense, and I'll get into some specifics after that.
Well, I want to start off by just noting how well Raven Green played today, because I feel like it wouldn't be good for my brand if I didn't do that. So yeah, Raven Green before injury, obviously had a really good game. And yeah, Jair Alexander, I like that you mentioned that Richard Sherman effect, because we did not hear his name called until probably like the 4th quarter. Like, none of the commentators mentioned his name at all. He broke up that target in the back of the end zone. I think it was for Will Fuller, I believe. He's just become this total just lockdown asset in the defense, and it just gives you a chance to just really kind of focus, and just, for Mike Pettin at least, it just kind of really gives you attention, just kind of trust what he's doing with Jair, and kind of redirect your focus to what you're doing with the rest of your guys. But yeah, Preston Smith also had a day. I think it was his best game of the season, not even just because he had that big stop on the read option on 4th down, but just because he was very active. He was moving around, he was flying all over the field. And I don't want to chalk it up to just being a product of the offensive line, because when you're going against Deshaun Watson, he was coming off his 2 best games of the year against Jacksonville and against Tennessee, a guy who can move around, and who Jair was even talking about how he was going to be an issue, and how guys downfield had to stick with their man for 6 to 10 seconds. Like, his ability to extend plays is going to be a problem for this defense. He said that earlier in the week. So getting pressure and being able to just kind of make Watson uncomfortable, that was going to be a huge thing for the Packers front seven this week. And Preston Smith, he held up his end of the bargain. He was able to wrap up well, make tackles, and he was able to really generate pressure. So I think really if you're going to, if I could award 2 game balls to players in this defense today, as much as I love Chris Barnes' performance as well, it would just go to Raven Green and Preston Smith. Green did have a really rough patch where he was getting carved up by Randall Cobb and one other guy. I can't remember who it was, but he was getting carved up for a good while towards like the middle of the game, which I think really was just a matter of the Packers just kind of like not really getting their bearings underneath them defensively, because the entire defense was out of sorts on that drive. It was one of the Texans' scoring drives, I believe in the second quarter or the third quarter. I'm not sure. Yeah, if you can't tell, I haven't been able to rewatch it yet, but yeah, Raven Green and Preston Smith, two of my favorite players on Sunday.
Absolutely. And something else I wanted to talk about, guys, and it kind of lends to your Chris Barnes and Kamal Martin to some degree as well, playing on the linebacker position. But the Packers' run defense is quietly, last week, I know they gave up over 100 yards rushing to Ronald Jones, but a lot of that really came after Bakhtiari was injured and they had essentially punted on the rest of the game. They've gotten better quietly over the last 3 games. Now, that being said, they do have some bigger tests coming. David Johnson is a shell of himself. I understand that. The Buccaneers are not going to beat you necessarily by running the ball up and down the field like that. And Todd Gurley is a shell of himself. The next 2 games in about 5 days, they will face off against Dalvin Cook. And then on Thursday, they'll face the 49ers, who we all know what happened last year when they faced off against San Francisco the second time around. That being said, the run defense everybody talks about, they're middle of the pack based on yardage per game and everything like that, which I thought was kind of interesting. Some of that could be because they had some big leads early and they kind of forced teams to stop running the ball a little bit. But I think they've gotten better over the last few games. Teams haven't gashed them in the running game really since Alvin Kamara. And like I said, garbage time with Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughn and everybody that was running the ball for Tampa Bay last week. But do you guys think this run defense is getting better, and what do you attribute that to? Are they just more assignments? Sure. Do you think that the linebackers, Chris Barnes has obviously been a nice little undrafted surprise for this year. The defensive line is playing better. Zach, what do you attribute this to so far for this 3-week stretch, and do you think it's sustainable?
Well, I think it was just a matter of guys stepping up along the defensive line. Yeah, Montravius Adams put together a couple big games. You had Tyler Lancaster before his injury really rise to the occasion. Same with Kingsley Keke. He had a really great start to the season, and that was important that you got those contributions from those guys while Kenny Clark was sidelined, and now he's back in the mix. So I think you're kind of seeing them finally reaping the rewards of their efforts and their work. I think they're also just playing with confidence, more confidence in what their assignments are. They're just able to kind of really just play in tune with what the defense is doing. And it also helps that behind them, they're finally getting some formidable play at linebacker. They're getting some help from Chris Barnes and whoever they have playing next to him, whether it's Raymond Green or Adrian Amos getting snaps in the box or Will Redmond, whoever that interchangeable safety is that they come having play in the box next to him, they're getting some help from that second level. So I think it's an accumulation of things. Just that whole front seven really just stepping up and playing really well against the run.
Jason, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the biggest thing is when do they tackle well? Because when they tackle well, they're doing well against the run. They're better that way. They struggled with that last week. They had so many missed tackles that's one of the biggest issues they had. Kenny Clark missed a couple games. That's going to make a difference there too. And the linebackers are good. The Barnes, Kamal Martin effect, stuff in the run, getting up in there. Now, I was a little hard on Josh Jackson today. He made a couple good plays in run support from the secondary. Darnell Savage is typically pretty good in run support. That's the biggest key is when you decide, I think as a unit, when the team decides, look, you're not running on us. If you're going to beat us, you're going to have to do something else. And I think the defense has just decided that they're not going to be run on this year. It's a passing league, and it's like, look, teams are going to get their yards through the pass one way or another, because eventually you're just you're going to give up yards. You're going to get flagged. The refs are looking out for pass interference. I think it's a mentality on defense. I think it starts with just that leadership that you saw with like Z, Preston, Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, and Kingsley Kiki and guys like that. We're not going to get run on. Now, again, like you said, Jake, talk to us in 2 weeks after they've faced a couple of teams that have really good running games and some decent offensive lines, and we'll see how much that will really matters. But take care of what's in front of you. You know, that Devontae quote, I think I can only eat what was it? I can only eat what's in front of me. Is that what he said? I think that's going to become kind of a mantra. You know, the Packers have definitely done that so far with the exception of one game. But yeah, they're just, I think it's an attitude. And again, it's the tackling. You know, the tackling just seemed a lot cleaner this week. I don't know. There were cobwebs so bad last week. And I think, like you said, Jake, they just mentally punted on that game and the pick six and can't have those kind of things happen. But they just decided they weren't going to give up yards on the ground. And then look how the game ended. David Johnson fumbles, game over.
Yeah, and overall, just nice to see a get-right game. Obviously, the Packers, you can only play who's in front of you, and they're going to have some different games. The 49ers certainly look like the team that we thought they were coming into the season. They won big again today in Foxborough, and I know that that's been a tough place to play. I know Cam Newton hasn't played well recently, and that's not the Patriots of old necessarily, but they went in there and they stomped them, and they're coming off a big win against the Los Angeles Rams last week, and I believe they play either the Rams or the Seahawks on Sunday, so they'll have a divisional matchup on Sunday here before they take on the Packers here on Thursday night. But that's going to be a bit of a showdown. And then you want to talk about a litmus test. That's who the Packers are going to be measured against. You know, we're not talking about bottom feeders like the Minnesota Vikings. The Packers aren't going to be measured against crappy teams like the Minnesota Vikings, because the Minnesota Vikings are commenting towards or working towards the tank for Trevor Lawrence derby. And good luck to them, because the New York Jets exist, quite frankly.
Yeah, the Vikings suck. Make sure you hear that.
There we go. So the 49ers play the Seahawks on Sunday. So that's going to be a fun little bit there. So thank you to Aaron for shouting us out on that. 49ers and Seahawks is a good one. So, I mean, both teams are playing a division game. Maybe a little bit. Maybe that'll take a little bit out of them. I don't know. But that's who the Packers are going to be measured against, not any team like that. But it was nice to see them get right. You got to bank these wins. They're not going to take anything away from them from these wins. And get them while you can, because then you look at the rest of the schedule. I mean, the Packers have, if you pull their schedule through the rest of this month, they'll play Minnesota on Sunday, then they play the 49ers, and then they have Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and a Sunday night game against Chicago to close up the month of November. And realistically, the Packers should win all of those. They'll be favored in all of those games except for one. The only one they won't be favored in is at San Francisco, probably. They should win all but maybe one of those games. You do that, you're at 9-1. I think if math serves on that, going into December, where you've got a bit of a tough stretch coming on towards that December month of this season too. So I'm going to be interested to see how that goes. But overall, big for the Packers to get a win today, especially after last week. It would have been very easy to allow them to just think that they could show up and beat the Texans, turn one loss into two, like Matt LaFleur likes to say. But I think the Packers are in a good spot. I want to see if, can this defense do something against a real team or a better team with more to play for? Because the Texans have talent on offense, but they don't have anything to play for. But kudos to them. They relatively shut down who was in front of them today. I mean, Deshaun Watson, his final line, it wasn't big, 25 of 39 or 29 of 39, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. So that was good, but some of that came after the game was already over. And David Johnson didn't run for 50 yards. So they did a relatively good job of handling things. So I think the Packers did a relatively good job on the defensive side of the ball. Hard to feel too hard about anything. Let's take a real quick look into next week. They will take on the Minnesota Vikings. It is a home game. The Vikings have waved the white flag, guys. Yannick Ngakoue was traded. God bless Rick Spielman. He traded a second-round pick for 5 games of Yannick Ngakoue and moved back about 50 spots into the third round to trade him to the Ravens, essentially. Now, we talked earlier about Harrison Smith potentially wanting out. Maybe the Vikings are going to look to kind of sell off some stuff, but he can't really commit to a full rebuild because, as he said, the Vikings have a gazillion dollars lined up into Kirk Cousins. Sorry, it's never not funny. And then they just paid Dalvin Cook this offseason as well. So they have that core, and Adam Thielen just got his money. They have some pieces, obviously, so that part is nice, but they can't really commit to a rebuild when you have a $31 million quarterback cap, and that goes to $45 million, not next season, but the season after. That's all beside the point. The Vikings have waved the white flag on this season. That being said, Greg Jennings did say this week that when he went to Minnesota, the culture was he was told, beat the Packers, is what he was told, which makes perfect sense that is what their organization tells people, but that is what it is. What are your guys' thoughts, initial thoughts, just going into a home game against a divisional opponent next week? Zach, I'll start with you.
It's like...
I mean, that tells you everything, right? Even when people were calling this going into this week's game, they were calling it a get right game for the Packers because they were playing the 1-5 Texans, and they're really this garbage team that the Packers should just totally throttle and bully and push around and stuff and use them to get back on track. Even I wasn't looking past them. I thought they were still a good football team that could still maybe, give the Packers a little bit of a problem. It could be a little bit of a tough game. They could still have their little struggles here and there, but I feel the opposite of that this week. I feel like this is going to be a layup game for the Packers. They're going to go into and just absolutely just like wrap their hands around the Vikings' neck and just choke them until they're lifeless. I feel like this is the type of game that the Packers just dominate. A game that when I think of a home game against the Vikings, the first type of game that comes in my mind was the 2007 game against the Vikings at Lambeau. Ruvell Martin caught this tip ball in the left corner of the end zone. That immediately comes to mind. It was a 34-0 shutout. I think the Packers get a shutout this week. I think they shut out the Vikings at Lambeau. I don't have a score in mind. Obviously, it's Sunday night, still too early, and I haven't really looked into anything, but there's just absolutely nothing about this Vikings team. Like, I think they're the division doormat. I would be more scared of going up against the Lions, just going off of recent history of the Packers against the Lions, whether it's in Detroit or if it's in Green Bay, and considering the fact the Packers didn't lead them at any point last season. I would be more probably petrified of going up against the Lions than the Vikings. Like, they're abysmal. They're a horrible football team.
Yeah, they are. And I don't think that, they're not good on the front of either side. And they're even worse on the front than when the Packers played them the first time around because Ngakwe's not there. And obviously Danielle Hunter's not available. I think the Packers can run. They can pass. Offensively, they should be able to do whatever they want. I don't think they're going to shut them out. The Vikings have too much talent on the offensive side of the ball for that. Dalvin Cook should be back. He's as good as it gets, obviously. Adam Thielen's still a very capable player. And Justin Jefferson is probably the offensive rookie of the year. At this point, I don't want to say that too loud because Packers Twitter, like I mentioned, if a rookie wide receiver farts and it doesn't smell bad, they're more than willing to tell you that is what just happened. So maturity level is at an all-time high on this show. So thank you guys for that.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. I guess I should only thank myself. And like my guy here in the llama mentions in the chat, Kirk Cousins is the garbage time king. So when it gets to garbage time, they will score. So I do think the Packers should win this game. Again, you can only eat what's in front of you. My thing is get ahead, stay ahead, and try and get ready because those Thursday night games on the road, they're tough anyways. And then you add in it's a Thursday night on the road against the 49ers. I would like to speak to the schedule maker and whose idea that was because I would like to kick them in the shins. That is horrible. Jason, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, beat the Packers is a Minnesota thing. It's not just a Vikings thing, and it's a terrible, mentality that they have. They'll celebrate a Packers loss harder than they've ever celebrated one of their own team's victories. It's take care of business, get it done, and I think there's something to be said there. Like, be able to start sitting guys early because it's a Thursday night game. Maybe their schedule makers were looking at what happened last year, and they're like, look, we know what's going to happen. They have to play in San Francisco. It's the formula of the schedule, so we might as well just go ahead and double up and give it to Green Bay on a short week since they're going to get pounded anyway. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if that actually ends up happening or not. Jimmy Garoppolo is not looking all world this year, so I don't. I'll just say this: if he only throws the ball 9 times, it's probably because he didn't finish the game. So it'll be a different story this time around. But the Packers, just get up early. You're going to deflate this Minnesota team very quickly and very easily. Don't let them hang around because guys like Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen, and then last week I kind of glossed over it in the pregame show, but you know how I feel about when guys that are past their prime are lighting the Packers up, and Brady to Gronk. Gronk catches his first touchdown pass against who? I don't want to see Kyle Rudolph going off. I don't want to see any of that kind of stuff happening. I don't think it will, but I'm just throwing it out there because if it does, I want it on the record that I'm going to rant and I'm probably going to say some really stupid things. So that's all. It's Packers, Vikings, Lambeau Field. We know what the result is. What else we got?
Well, it better not be a roughing the passer bogus penalty that leads to a tie. That's all I'm going to say on that. But I think I'm with you guys. I think Green Bay wins. I think that, my hope and something that I'm going to listen to closely this week, something I've grown to appreciate more is just listening to what the players have to say and like where their mindset is going into certain games. And it would be very easy to look past this Vikings team going into a potential showdown with this 49ers team that is red hot. And I say red hot, they've won 2 games in a row, but they've won 2 games in a row relatively convincingly against 2 teams that they very easily could have lost against. And their season was kind of on the brink, right? They lose against Philly on a Sunday night game, and you start looking at their schedule, wondering, are the 49ers even going to make the playoffs? My man's here in the very simple. This could be a trap game. And I don't know if it will be. The Packers have been good at avoiding that. They had the Falcons game right before the bye. It was a Monday night game right before the bye week. The Packers blew them out. That game was a wire-to-wire victory. But I'll be interested to see how that goes. Overall, the Packers are better. They're more talented. They're better coached. They're better everything. And they're just a better overall organization as evidenced by 13 world titles versus 0. So that's going to do this for today's show. I appreciate you guys all stopping by for us. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at GameOnWI on Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. You can find us Game On Wisconsin and all of everything on the website, GameOnWI.com. Zach Jacobson has not bathed in 2 weeks, but still follow him on Twitter anyways at It's Zachariah J. Catch him on Wednesdays on the Open Book with Eli Berkowitz. And of course, the Illusion of Complexity with myself and Aaron Alice. We will be live for you guys. It's been a lot of fun. I've got another new fun intro for Zach this week that we'll have to figure out. I haven't fully figured out how I want to do it yet, but I'm interested to see what I come up with between now and when we record on Wednesday night.
Is it going to require me singing again?
It might. We'll see. We'll see. So if it requires you singing, though, it requires me to sing too. So it was kind of a hit the first time around.
Let's do a duet, Jacob.
We could do a duet. So yeah, I'm with it. So although I was told, somebody told me that, let me see if I can find this real quick, that I had to find this guy. No. I try and sing that myself, and I don't think I can do that. My voice can't get that high. You can follow Jason. He is at Jason Perrone on Twitter. He has got the Quick Slants podcast on Wednesdays, and you can find him, of course, on Pulse of the Pack every Saturday when he's not ditching me. Tomorrow, we have the happy hour. It is Victory Monday again, which is only right. It's much better when the ladies are giving us happy stuff for happy hour instead of a therapy session. As much as I appreciated you two, Maggie and Perry, helping me feel better about the fact that Green Bay had just lost, I like it much better when you guys are happy-go-lucky and the Packers have won a game going into it. And you can find me. I am at Jacob Westendorf. Tuesday nights, I have the Jamal Williams show with Jimmy Christensen and, of course, Jay Swag Daddy, Jamal Williams. So we've got the touchdown machine. That's what I'm calling him now, at least. And my best friend. I don't know if he knows that, but we're best friends. So, Jamal, I'm going to tell him on Tuesday, but I've been saying that all week. He's going to be like, you're an idiot or something like that. But look forward to it, guys. The Packers win 35-20. These shows are a lot more fun when that happens. Zach, Jason, thanks for joining me. Guys, hit it.